My name is Captain Rachel Monroe. I'm 28 years old, and I serve in the United States Army. It still feels strange to say that out loud, not because I'm ashamed, but because of what it cost me. I grew up in suburban Virginia, in a house that looked picture-perfect from the outside. White picket fence, manicured lawn, Sunday dinners. But inside those walls, everything was about appearances, expectations, and silence. And when I decided to break that silence, to follow my own path, everything changed. I was 18 when I told my parents I had enlisted. My father's fork hit the plate with a loud clang. My mother didn't say a word, just stared at her mashed potatoes like they might answer her prayers. My younger sister, Lauren, looked at me like I'd grown two heads. They had all expected me to go to Yale, follow Dad into law, marry someone like Evan Thompson from church. But that life felt like a tight suit I couldn't breathe in. The uniform I chose instead gave me room to move, to become someone else, someone stronger. The fallout was immediate. My father called it a betrayal. He didn't raise a soldier, he said. He raised a Monroe. My mother just cried, quietly, every time I came home in fatigues. Lauren stopped texting me altogether. The day I left for basic training, no one came to the bus station. I sat there, duffel at my feet, staring down the road, pretending I didn't care. But the truth is, I had never felt so alone. Boot camp was hard, physically, emotionally, mentally. But I discovered something about myself in those months. I could endure. I could lead. I could matter. Every drop of sweat, every bruise, every shout in my face was forging something inside me, something solid. And while my family slipped further into the background, the Army became my new one. We bled together, cried together, stood shoulder to shoulder. That kind of bond doesn't need blood. It's built in the fire. I sent letters home during those early months. Nothing dramatic, just updates, photos, the kind of thing a daughter sends to say, "I'm still here." None were answered. My mother unfriended me on Facebook. My father sent one message. "This is your bed, Rachel. Lie in it." It burned, but I kept my head down, focused on the mission. The battlefield had more honor than my childhood home. Over the years, I rose through the ranks. I deployed 3 times, twice to Afghanistan, once to Iraq. I lost friends. I saw things I can't unsee, but I also saw courage, sacrifice, humanity in its rawest form. I was awarded the Silver Star after pulling 2 wounded soldiers from a burning Humvee. That moment, like so many others, felt distant, like it belonged to a movie version of me. But the medal was real. The scars were real. And the silence from home remained deafening. Then, one spring morning, an email arrived from an old friend back home. "Lauren's getting married," it read. "Big ceremony. The whole town's invited." I stared at the screen for a long time. No one had told me. No invitation came. But I knew they wouldn't expect me there. Not after what my father had said at the last family dinner, before I left for deployment. "You're not part of this family anymore." I carried those words into every mission, every sleepless night. They echoed louder than gunfire. I didn't respond to the email. I didn't need to. A part of me had made peace with the exile. I had learned to stop hoping for a reunion that would never come. But as the weeks passed, something began to shift. I started imagining the wedding, Lauren in white, my parents beaming, the whole town celebrating, and me, forgotten, erased. That image started to eat at me in a way nothing else had. Not bullets, not blood, not even the silence. I looked at the rack of medals in my small apartment on base. 4 stars, years of service, a career carved out in grit and determination. And for what? To be invisible to the people who once sang me lullabies? Something in me hardened. I didn't need an invitation. I had earned my place, not just in the Army, but in life. And maybe it was time they saw who I had become. So I booked a flight, pressed my uniform, polished my medals, packed light. No speech, no revenge, just presence, just truth. If they couldn't see me as family, maybe they could see me as what I truly am. A soldier, a leader, a woman who refused to disappear. The day I arrived in town, the air felt thick with memory. Everything looked smaller. The old grocery store, the winding road past the school, even the Monroe house on Birchwood Lane. I hadn't set foot there in nearly 9 years. I parked a few blocks away from the church where Lauren's wedding was set to take place. My heart beat like I was gearing up for battle. Funny how facing your family can be harder than facing enemy fire. I sat in the car for a while, just watching people arrive. There were familiar faces. Neighbors, church folks, old classmates. They hugged each other, laughed, adjusted ties. No one noticed the woman sitting quietly behind the wheel, uniform pressed sharp, 4 silver stars gleaming on her shoulder. I watched my father walk up the steps in a navy blue suit, holding my mother's hand. She looked thinner than I remembered. He looked exactly the same, controlled, proud, untouchable. Then came Lauren. She stepped out of a black SUV in a sleek white dress, bouquet in hand, hair pinned back with tiny white pearls. She looked beautiful, grown, different. And in that moment, I wondered if she had ever missed me, if she ever thought about her sister while planning this perfect day. But the way she moved, smiling, laughing, surrounded by bridesmaids, made it clear I was no longer a part of her world. I stepped out of the car slowly, letting the sun hit my uniform. A few heads turned. Some stared. A few whispered. I walked toward the church entrance, back straight, hands at my sides. My boots echoed on the steps. As I reached the door, a man in a gray suit, probably one of the ushers, stepped in front of me. Are you with the wedding party?" he asked, unsure. "No," I said, voice calm. "I'm family." He hesitated, glanced over his shoulder, and then moved aside. I entered the church just as the music started. Heads turned. I felt every pair of eyes on me, some wide with recognition, others with confusion. I walked slowly, deliberately, and took a seat in the last pew on the left. My medals clinked softly as I sat down. I saw my father glance back. He froze, then looked away. My mother didn't turn around. Neither did Lauren. The ceremony went on. Vows were spoken. Rings exchanged. The kiss. The applause. I watched it all from the shadows, a stranger in the crowd. But I didn't feel small. I felt solid, grounded, like every mile, every mission, every tear had brought me to this very moment. Not for revenge, but for clarity. They had written me out, but I had never disappeared. I had built something they never could take away. After the ceremony, guests poured out into the courtyard. I stepped out quietly, keeping to the edge. That's when I saw her, Lauren, laughing with her new husband, a glass of champagne in hand. She looked straight past me, then stopped. Her smile faltered. She turned to look again. Our eyes met. For a second, time folded. She blinked. I nodded. She said nothing, just turned away. I didn't chase her. I wasn't there for reconciliation. I wasn't there to beg for scraps of love. I was there because I refused to be erased. And in that moment, I could tell. She knew it. My presence had said everything I needed to say. I turned to leave, then a hand touched my arm. I turned sharply, a reflex, only to see Mrs. Henley, our old neighbor, standing there with tears in her eyes. "Rachel," she whispered. "You came." I nodded. She took my hand. "They were wrong. We were all wrong. You grew into someone remarkable." My throat tightened, but I didn't speak. She squeezed my hand. "Don't let them make you question your worth. They don't know what you've done, but I do, and I'm proud of you." For the first time in years, I felt something inside me soften. I thanked her and stepped away, back toward my car. I didn't look back at the church. I had seen what I needed to see, heard what I needed to hear. They could keep their silence. I had found my voice elsewhere, in the dust of war zones, in the bonds of soldiers, in the weight of honor. And as I started the engine, I knew this chapter was closed. But my story was far from over. The drive out of town felt lighter than the one in. I hadn't realized how much weight I'd been carrying until I walked into that church and saw the life they built without me. And still, I didn't regret going. Not for a second. That moment with Mrs. Henley, her hand on mine, her voice steady with pride. It reminded me that not all ties are broken, and not all family is blood. Back on base, the days returned to routine. Mornings started before sunrise. Paperwork, drills, mentoring younger officers. But something inside me had shifted. I started speaking more in briefings. I asked to lead tougher missions. I volunteered for the training academy. something I'd avoided before. The past had lost its grip on me. That weekend at the wedding had drawn a clear line, and I had chosen to live forward, not back. One afternoon, I got a message from a reporter, someone covering veterans who had overcome personal challenges. At first, I ignored it. I didn't want my life turned into a headline. But after the third message, I agreed to a short interview. We met at a quiet diner near base. She listened more than she spoke, letting me lead. And for the first time, I told someone the full story. Not just the medals and deployments, but the part about being disowned, about showing up to that wedding in uniform. The article came out 2 weeks later. It was titled, "From Family Rejection to 4-Star Respect, Captain Monroe's Journey." I braced for judgment, but the reaction was the opposite. My inbox filled with messages, soldiers, mothers, even strangers who said they felt seen. Some shared their own stories of being cast out for living their truth. Others just said, "Thank you. You reminded me I'm not alone." I wasn't prepared for how deeply that would affect me. A few days after the article was published, I got a letter, handwritten, no return address, just my name, Captain Rachel Monroe. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was my mother's. I held it for a long time before opening it. The paper shook in my hands as I read. She wrote that she had seen the article, that she had cried, that she had never truly understood what I had done, what I had become. "I was afraid," she wrote, "afraid of losing you, and in that fear, I pushed you away." She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't make excuses. She just said she was sorry, that she missed me, that she wished things had been different. It wasn't a full repair, but it was a start. I didn't respond right away. I needed time, but that letter, simple as it was, cracked something open. Not just between us, but in me. I started to believe that maybe healing was possible, that not every burned bridge stays ashes. A few weeks later, Lauren sent a message too. Not a letter, just a short email. "I saw you at the wedding," it read. "I didn't know how to talk to you, but I want to. Can we try?" I stared at that sentence for a long time. It felt like a lifeline tossed into deep water. I didn't know if I was ready, but I replied anyway. "Yes, we can try." Healing wasn't a ceremony. It was a process. One small choice at a time. That weekend, I sat with a group of cadets at the training center. One of them, a 22-year-old from Texas, asked why I had stayed in the military so long. I thought about it, about all the things I had lost and found. "Because this gave me a place to stand," I said. "When the world told me I didn't belong, this gave me purpose. It gave me people who didn't care where I came from, just what I stood for." That night, I stood alone on the training field under the stars. The air was cool, quiet, and I thought about who I had become. Not just the soldier, but the woman who walked into that church and claimed her place. I wasn't the same Rachel Monroe they had tried to forget. I was stronger now, not because of the battles I had fought, but because of the ones I chose not to. A year after the wedding, I stood on stage at Fort Bragg in full dress uniform. My promotion to brigadier general had just been announced. The crowd stood in applause as the commanding officer read my record. Deployments, commendations, leadership roles. But all I could hear was the quiet beat of my own heart. That moment wasn't about the stars on my shoulder. It was about the journey, from the girl they cast out to the woman who stood tall, unshaken. After the ceremony, I lingered at the edge of the crowd. Cadets and fellow officers came to congratulate me. I smiled, shook hands, accepted hugs. Then I saw them, standing off to the side, awkward, hesitant. My mother and Lauren. No fanfare, no grand entrance, just two women trying to find their way back to someone they'd once known. My mother's eyes were red. Lauren clutched a small bouquet of white daisies, my favorite from when we were kids. I walked toward them slowly. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with a quiet vulnerability I hadn't felt in years. My mother was the first to speak. "You look like your father, but you walk like me," she said, her voice trembling. We stood in silence for a moment. Then I nodded. "I get the stubborn from both sides," I said. We all laughed, a soft, uncertain laugh, but real. Lauren stepped forward, her voice catching. "I should have said something at the wedding. I didn't know how." I looked at her. "You didn't have to say anything. Just seeing me was enough." She nodded, tears in her eyes. You've done more than any of us ever imagined. I don't know if I can fix what happened, but I want to try. I want you back in my life, Rachel. Please." I felt something shift in that moment. Not a sudden resolution, but the start of something honest. A rebuilding. Over the next months, we started small. Coffee calls with Lauren. Letters back and forth with my mother. No expectations. Just effort. The conversations were sometimes awkward, often emotional, but they were real. We talked about the past, about what hurt, what broke, and what still ached. But we also talked about the future, about possibility, about showing up, about family redefined. One weekend, I invited them both to a small veterans event I was hosting. They came. My mother wore a simple navy dress. Lauren brought cookies, and when I introduced them to my team, I said, "These are my people." And for the first time I meant it, not out of duty, but out of choice. I was no longer looking for a place to belong. I had built it around me. Later that night, as we sat around a small fire pit outside base housing, my mother reached for my hand. "I didn't know how strong you were," she whispered. I looked at her, eyes steady. "I didn't either, until I had to be." She nodded slowly. "Thank you for not giving up on us. Even when we gave up on you." I didn't say anything. Some wounds never close perfectly, but that night, the healing felt real. In the years that followed, I continued to serve. I traveled. I spoke to young women who dreamed of the uniform. I told my story, not to be praised, but to show them what was possible when you choose your path, no matter the cost. I never told it with bitterness. Only truth, only pride, only the kind of quiet strength that no rejection could take from me. And every now and then, I'd receive a note from someone who read about that wedding, the one where they said I didn't belong, the one where I showed up anyway. They'd say it gave them courage, that it made them feel seen, that they, too, would walk into their own room full of silence and stand tall. So if you ask me today who I am, I'll tell you this. I'm Brigadier General Rachel Monroe. I'm a soldier, a daughter, a sister, a survivor, and I never needed their permission to belong, because I was never lost. I was just waiting for the world to catch up with who I've always been.